Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the UCM podcast. This is Dr. Bill Davis, your host for today from UCM Practice Growth Systems. Welcome, upper cervical doctors and students. And we are so excited to be with you again, once again today for the UCM podcast. And today we're going to be talking about your first 5 years as a chiropractor. This is a new book that has recently been released, and I'm going to give you some highlights from the book and tell you more about why this is so important to focus on your first 5 years as a chiropractor. And even if you are not in that first 5 years, why there's principles in here that are still very important for you to understand, whether you are training associates or you have students in your world, whether it's your kids or other people, your CAs who are going to chiropractic school, whatever it may be. There is certain things that are just crucial to understand as it relates to the first 5 years of a chiropractic career, because most chiropractors don't fail because they're bad doctors. They fail because they make the wrong decisions in those first 5 years. You may have the clinical skills, you may be very passionate about what you're doing, but without a clear roadmap, even talented doctors will drift into patterns that quietly limit their income, their confidence, and their career trajectory, often before they realize what's happening. And so, who is this for? This podcast is designed for anyone navigating the early chapters of a chiropractic career, or like I said, if you are someone who is mentoring someone who is in that season as well, this could very much help you. So, whether you're still in school or you're already in practice, if you're a chiropractic student, if you're a recent graduate, a new doctor, or you're just feeling unsure about the next step, this is really going to help you get clarity as it relates to this crucial time period of a chiropractic career. So the problem that no one talks about is, what school really prepares you for is, chiropractic school helps you to understand anatomy and functional biomechanics and x-ray and all the things that you go through in school. You learn the chiropractic basics, and it hopefully prepares you to pass your boards, right? Like, that's the main things that chiropractic school does. But what it doesn't teach you is, should I specialize or should I stay general? Should I start my own practice or associate first? How do I avoid the mistakes that cost others years, right? That's what this podcast and this book that we wrote really is designed to fill the gap as it relates to those questions. And the stakes are higher than you think. Those first 5 years aren't just a warm up, they're the foundation upon which everything else is built. Early decisions compound for better or worse, and the patterns you establish in those beginning of your chiropractic career make a big difference. They make a difference for your confidence. You're either built or broken by early clinical wins and mentorship quality. If you've got good, strong mentors and you've got a great environment to grow in, your confidence is going to soar. Your habits, this is a crucial one, and one that a lot of people don't think about. The habits that you establish, those professional patterns, though, that when you form those early in the right way, they are remarkably hard to change later, either for the positive or the negative. You develop bad habits in your first few years of practice, you're going to continue in those you're likely to continue in those in the future. And the same thing, though, if you develop good habits, you can continue those. And your income, your trajectory set by the systems environments that you choose, and ultimately your trajectory. The long-term success is largely determined by who you become during these early years of practice. The success is not determined by adjusting alone. That's just the reality of the situation. It's not about just, if I'm a great adjuster, if I can get a great upper cervical correction, or whatever you're doing, is that's not enough. It's never been enough, and it never will be enough. there's plenty of highly talented chiropractors who struggle. And there's actually, there's a lot of average clinicians or average chiropractors really as it relates to their adjusting skills that thrive. The difference isn't just skill, it's the combination of clarity, direction, and early decisions made intentionally in those first few years. And so getting that clarity is crucial, knowing who you are, knowing what you want from your career, getting a clear direction in mind, choosing a path aligned with your strengths and your goals, and those early decisions that you make, acting with intention during those most formative years of practice. So let's talk about some big decisions that you got to make in those first few years of practice. One is, should I be a generalist or a specialist? Right? The generalist path is, just someone who does general chiropractic. They do the most common chiropractic adjustments out there and do those consistently, do those over and over and over. And the thought is generalists can serve anyone, and that sounds like an advantage, but in a crowded marketplace, being everything to everyone often means being nothing to no one. Generalists have to compete on price and location. And I'll tell you, the joint is always going to be cheaper because that's their business model. And so if you're a generalist, you're competing with things like the joint. And so the specialist advantage is that specialists attract. When you're known for something specific, like upper cervical care, or even other specialties like neurology or sports performance or pediatrics, or these types of specialties within chiropractic, patients seek you out, referrals flow more naturally, and your results speaks for themselves. You get that clarity, which leads to better results and faster growth. It's not just a coincidence. This is a formula for success that we've seen within chiropractic for many, many years. And the earlier you choose your lane, the faster you build your reputation, your referral networks, and your clinical mastery. Specialization is not limiting, it's actually liberating. And so making this decision, are you going to be a general chiropractor? Are you going to be a specialist within the chiropractic profession, is a big decision to make. And what we recommend is to specialize. Big decision number 2 is to be either an associate or an owner, right? The instinct to own your own practice as quickly as possible is understandable. A lot of people go to chiropractic school because they want to have their own practice, but it's not always the smartest move, especially coming straight out of school. Starting early isn't always the fastest path to success. The right training environment as an associate can accelerate your skills, your business acumen, your patient communication much faster than struggling alone ever could. Ownership is the goal for many, but the when and the how matter enormously, right? So if you're coming out of chiropractic school or you're a recent graduate, really think this through. There's a huge case for associating first, because you can learn systems that work. You can refine your technique under mentorship. You can build income without the full weight of overhead and business decisions before you're ready, especially if you're coming out of chiropractic school with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, which is common. Now, there is a case for early ownership, and there are some people who are ready to open a practice coming out of school. It's very uncommon in my experience that someone coming out of chiropractic school is ready to open their own practice. But if you have the right training, the mindset, and the support structure, ownership can fast track your income and autonomy, but only when the foundation is solid. And so we created an assessment to help you with this big decision. If you're not sure, should I start my own practice or should I associate? It's such a consequential career choice, and it deserves more than just a gut feeling, right? And so we've created this free associate or practice owner readiness assessment that can help you make this decision with clarity and confidence. And it's based on where you actually are right now, based on actual statistical data that we have put together over all these years. What the assessment's going to reveal for you is your current readiness for either ownership or associateship, the specific gaps that are standing in your way between you and your next step if you do want to own a practice, uh, and a personalized recommendation based on your situation, and you can take it for free. This is a great assessment. It takes less than 5 minutes. It gives you real direction. You can go to ucmgrow.com/ready, ucmgrow.com/ready, and you can take that associate or practice owner readiness assessment. Big decision number 3 is choosing the right practice, right? So if you do decide that an associate position is your best choice, then you got to choose the right practice, a practice that is going to help you grow. You don't want to choose based on starting pay alone. That is not the only factor that matters as it relates to an associate position. You also don't want to choose an associate position based on location alone. You don't want to base it just on your vibe of the interview or what your classmates are doing, right? You want to choose based on the mentorship you will receive. That is huge. Is this person a mentor? Are they someone that you can learn from? Do they have systems and culture in place that you want to emulate? And I mean, it's never going to be exactly what you're doing, but when you have that type of environment, it is really important. You also want to choose based on the clinical volume and the case complexity. If you want to practice that's somewhat similar to what you envision, and who you will become there is the biggest thing to think about. What kind of a doctor am I going to become if I'm in this environment, right? And so this is a big decision. Number 3 is choosing that right practice. The right practice at the wrong pay is almost always better than the wrong practice at great pay. You can recover from low income. It's harder to recover from bad habits. You want to go someplace that's going to teach you good habits as it relates to chiropractic. So there's 2 traps that can catch doctors who are in an associate position. If you are in an associate position right now, you can leave too early. If you're in an associate position and you have the goal to start your own practice, you can chase independence before you've built your clinical depth and your business fundamentals. And that can really lead to stress and financial pressure and self-doubt. You take on overhead before you're equipped to carry it, and the struggle becomes the story. And so that's definitely something you don't want. You want to make sure that you've built up everything that you need. And we do cover this in the book. We talk about that. We talk about how to make sure you're going at the right time. If that is your goal to be a short-term associate, you can also stay too long. If you desire to open your own practice, you can get in a place of comfort, and it will create a lack of growth for you. You can remain in an environment past your development window and stop being challenged, stop growing, and quietly trade potential for a paycheck. Stagnation sets in before you notice. And so timing matters more than new doctors realize. Knowing when to move on is important as knowing where to go. And so this is another big decision, right? If you decide to be an associate and you want to be a short-term associate, thinking about the timing of when you leave is really, really important. And talking that over with your clinic director on the front end and all along the way is also really important. What the first 5 years actually for? What are they for? What should you be doing? What should you be focusing on, regardless of what you're doing? If you're on your own practice, if you're in a short-term associate position, or if you're in more of a long-term associate position, there's 3 main things that you want to be focusing on. Number 1 is clinical competence, right? You want to develop deep, repeatable skills in your chosen technique. Volume, you've got to get reps. You've got to adjust a lot of people. You got to take a lot of films. You got to analyze a lot of things. You've got to get the reps, right? And then you got to get feedback from your patients on how they respond to your care, but also feedback from your mentor, your clinic director who is mentoring you. And then actual mentorship. Mentorship is someone who is setting expectations, holding you accountable, helping you grow, training you, right? All of these things in your early years, they build that clinical confidence that translates into patient results and a more and more momentum in your career. You also want to focus on communication mastery. The best clinicians in the world lose patients to doctors who simply communicate better. You want to learn to educate, inspire, and connect, not just adjust. And then you want to learn systems and business acumen. You want to understand how a practice runs, scheduling, retention, financials, team culture. All of these things, they're not optional. It's the difference between a practice that grows and one that survives. And so, regardless of what path you choose during these first 5 years, if it's your own practice, if it's a short-term associate position or long-term associate position, learning clinical competence, communication mastery, and systems and business acumen are key. The other thing is I mentioned, long-term associate positions, and this can be an incredible career path for actually many doctors. It's something that isn't talked about enough. Not everyone needs to own a practice. Not everyone needs to do that to have a fulfilling, impactful, or financially strong career. Long-term associateship is a legitimate and powerful path, not a consolation prize. And so it really depends on your personality and your life situation. There's a lot of different situations that being an associate is just a much better situation for you, right? Because it is a more stable situation. You get more predictable income without the weight of business ownership, overhead, and staffing challenges. It can be very fulfilling. You can focus entirely on patient care and clinical excellence without, the other things that go along with running a business. And it can be very impactful. Some of the most influential chiropractors can be those who don't own a practice. Impact is not tied to ownership, right? Success is not a one size fits all. The right path is the one that aligns with your strengths, values, and vision, not someone else's definition of achievement. So keep that in mind. Think that through. Again, we have a whole chapter on this in the book if you want to dive deeper into this topic. Another thing that we've talked about within the book is why some doctors thrive and others don't, right? You can get two doctors that graduate same time, same program, and there's a completely different outcome in their lives and in their practice results. And a lot of it comes down to mindset, comes down to discipline, comes down to coachability, consistency, right? All of these things are key. We break down these in the book to help you in those first 5 years. You want to establish these types of habits that will lead to long-term success. And so what this book really gives you, Doc, is you want to think of your first 5 years as a chiropractor as the career course your chiropractic school didn't offer. This is a clear, practical roadmap for the most important season of your professional life, so you can avoid costly mistakes. You want to learn the most common early career errors, from choosing the wrong practice to specializing too late, so you can sidestep them entirely. You want to make confident decisions. You want to use a proven framework to evaluate your options with clarity instead of anxiety. We've got tools within the book to, actually give you like questions and tools to assess different situations to see whether or not this is the right path for you, right? So you can choose between different opportunities. And this book is designed to help you build real momentum, to use this throughout your first 5 years to really grow clinically and financially and personally. And that will lead into more and more stability later on in your practice life. And so you can get your copy of Your First 5 Years as a Chiropractor. This is a strategic guide to building confidence, momentum, and stability for free. We have the digital version of this book completely free on our website. You can go over to ucmgrow.com/book, ucmgrow.com/book, and you can download this for free. And you're going to get a complete career framework for your first 5 years in chiropractic, decision guides for the biggest choices you'll face. There's throughout the book, there's decision guides and actual checklists and actual things that can help you to make decisions, and strategies to build income, confidence, and momentum. And so if you want a paperback version, you can get it on Amazon. You can also, at that same link, you'll see that option there if you want that. But if you want the digital version, we give it to you for free. You go to ucmgrow.com/book, and you can grab your copy of your first 5 years as a chiropractor, our new book to help the early chiropractor, the early years chiropractor to thrive. And so love to have you pick up that book and learn from it and continue to grow in your chiropractic career. And as we always say around here, go team upper cervical.